This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, we're here at really one of the legendary places in all of Germany, the Kever of Rabbi Meir bar Baruch me Rothenburg, the Maharam of Rothenburg, who was born in Worms in Germany in the year 1215, and he is nifter in Einsesheim in Alsace, France in the year 1293. Now, the Maharam of Rothenburg is very well known. He wrote one of the Kinnos. He wrote Kinna Mem Aleph, Shali Srufa Be'esh, about the 24 cartloads of Talmud and commentaries that were burned in the year 1242. Now, the Maharam is one of the last of the Bali Toisus, and it's rare to have his chus to daven at one of the Kram of the Bali Toisus. How many Kivrei Bali Toisus do we have access to? And you say, what do you mean one of the Bali Toisus? The Chida writes that Toisus and Masechta Yuma is Maharam of Rothenburg. It's a very important idea. Toisus and Masechta Yuma is written by Maharam of Rothenburg. Maharam was a prolific writer. He wrote over 1,000 shuvos. The Maharam's contemporary said about him in the Am Shel Shomer writes, Lo haya kamoisai. There is no one like the Maharam of Rothenburg. In fact, the Chida brings down that in Svara you cannot argue on the Maharam of Rothenburg. Maharam of Rothenburg was a Talmud of the Or Zarua, so for the sake of brevity, we'll have to speak about the Or Zarua on a different occasion. The Maharam was born in 1220. In the second half of the 13th century, he becomes the unequivocal, undisputed leader of German Jewry. In the end of the Maharam's life became intolerable in Germany. Pogroms, taxes, blood libels. Many tried to flee Germany. The Emperor Rudolf I didn't want to lose his Jewish constituents, so he declared in 1286 that the Jews were his personal property. No one was allowed to leave Germany. Anyone who did, their property was confiscated. The Maharam almost fled, but there was a Jewish apostate by the name of, we don't know his name, who caught the Maharam at the border of Lombardy, and they imprisoned him in the castle in Einsesheim. And they demanded 23,000 talents of silver to redeem the Maharam. And the Maharam Paskin, based on the Mishnah and Gittin on Daf Mem Hey, you're not to redeem a captive more than their value. Now the Maharam's student, who is the Maharam's primary disciple? The Rosh. The Rosh argued on his Rabbi. The Rosh said for Rabban Shal Yisrael, you're allowed to play Yaser Mikdei Damam, and the Rosh was in the middle of raising the funds. Interestingly, the Maharam, unfortunately, the Maharam died in prison before they were able to redeem him in 1293. The Rosh had the money, but now the Rosh was scared that they would capture him in lieu of the Maharam, so the Rosh fled and he went to Spain, which is an amazing story in and of itself. So Maharam dies in 1293, the Rosh died in 1327 in Spain. The Maharam dies, they didn't let out his remains until Zachar Oisa Yishlatoiv, Alexander Wumpfim. He paid for the release, Almanas, and he gave up most of his money to release the Maharam on condition that upon his demise he would be Zoiche to Kvura right next to the Maharam. So can you imagine a Yid gave up his whole fortune, Kamat, to be Zoiche to be buried next to Maharam. Now it's very interesting to note that while the Maharam was imprisoned, he continued writing, he continued teaching. For instance, the Sefer Tashbates was written by a Talmud of the Maharam, Rabbeinu Shimshon Bar Tzadok. He wrote 590 Piskei Dinim that the Maharam taught him in jail. I'll give you an example. Ois Taf Tezvav. Says the Maharam, the Tashbates quotes the Maharam has taught Klal Yisrael. Kisha Adam Goimer B'daito L'Kadesh Hashem. When a person sets it to his mind to sanctify the name of God when put to the ultimate test. V'yes v'yim v'yimsar nafshe Kiddush Hashem. Kol masha oisen lai, whatever they may do to him. Hein skila, hein sreifa, hein kvura b'chayim. They could stone, they could burn, they could bury alive. Einoi koyev loy klum. You don't feel it. Says the Maharam, the Raya is twice in Tanakh it says Hikuni. It says Hikuni Pitsuni, and it says Hikuni Bal Chalisi. They hit me, they smite me, and it says they hit me, I am not ill. Says the Maharam, this teaches us that when a person is Meiser Nefesh Al Kiddush Hashem, the person does not feel any pain. Says the Maharam, here's the Raya, here's the proof. There is nobody in the world who could stick their finger in fire and not scream, ouch. And yet so many Yidden are jumping to the fire, HaKadosh Hashem. V'loi koirei loi oi, v'loi avoi. They don't say a word. They don't say anything. Why? We have a havtacha that when someone is Moshe Nefesh HaKadosh Hashem, there is no pain. And Maharam, besides from being one of the Balei HaTosos, is also a great Paitan. Kina Mem Aleph Shali Srufa Ba'esh. And it's interesting, in general, when we talk about the community of Worms, that in the years 1096, in the years of the Crusades, the community of Worms suffered much more than any other community in all of Europe and in all of Germany. And this is something that did not go unnoticed by the Rishonim. And the Sma records that the reason why the Jews of Worms suffered more than any other community is because the German community of Spires, Varmaiza, Magensa began in the times of Churban Bayis Rishon. And when Ezra came back in the times of Churban Bayis Sheni to rebuild the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, they sent message to the Jews of Worms, return with us, come help us rebuild Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim. And the Jews of Worms said, no, you go to your big Yerushalayim there in Eretz Yisrael, we will stay here in our little Yerushalayim, Varmaiza. And the Sma records that this was something that really irked the Shamayim, because here the Crusaders gave up their own homeland to redeem Israel. And the Jews of Worms, who had the opportunity to go back to Eretz Yisrael, decided to stay in the Gullus, and ultimately that is why they suffered the harsh fate of the Crusades more than any other Jewish community. But this is the Kever of one of the greatest of all the Balei Toises, Maharam Rutenberg, Zuchusa Yogen Olinu.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.